Hello, today in my books playlist I'm going to talk about I guess it's a short story, but it's a little bit longer, by Joseph Conrad called The Secret Sharer. And if you like anything you see here, you can hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. But this won't be that long of a video, but I read this recently and it had a pretty profound effect on me, so I want to talk about it a little bit. The Secret Sharer is a short story by Polish-British author Joseph Conrad, originally written in 1909 and first published in two parts in the August and September 1910 editions of Harper's Magazine. Okay, so if you know anything about Joseph Conrad, you know that he wrote Heart of Darkness, and he had a lot of experience on boats. Heart of Darkness takes place primarily on a boat, and so does this story. The basic plot is that a captain is new to a ship. He doesn't really know anybody on the ship, so there's this kind of nervousness towards the crew. He doesn't feel like they have given him respect yet, and he ends up finding this man swimming in the river who he rescues basically at night. And I don't want to tell you too much about the plot, so I can keep this relatively spoiler free, but the main sort of idea is that the captain sees himself as a stranger on his own ship, and this fugitive, because the man claims that he has murdered someone, the other man, the one that he pulls out of the water, he is kind of the alter ego of the captain in some ways. So I'm not going to say what happens in the story, aside from the fact that this is a great tale of the uncanny, and there's a lot in here about psychology. There's this doubling device that Conrad uses where the captain keeps referring to the fugitive as my double or my second self. And I want to get into that a little bit because the whole reason I read this story was I started working on my next novel, and one of the kind of aspects of it that I want to explore is the uncanny. And in my home here in Korea, I have a lot of books that people have given me because when expats come here, they'll buy a book here, a book there, or other expats will give them books, and suddenly they'll have all these books, and then they want to leave the country, and sometimes they can't sell them fast enough or whatever, and then they just give them to someone else. And so I have a bookcase here with a bunch of books on it that I haven't read, and in starting to do research for my next novel, I was flipping through the books and I saw Heart of Darkness, and I was like, maybe I should reread that. And because I want to do this story of the uncanny, and I do kind of want that kind of going into the primitive kind of vibe in the book, so I thought that might help in some way. So I reached for it, and it ended up, let me see if I have it here. Yep, there it is. I reached for it. Oh, can you see that? Yeah. So once I grabbed it, I realized that there was a second story in here called The Secret Sharer. And most of the book is Heart of Darkness, but The Secret Sharer opens it up, and I thought, that looks interesting. So I read the back, and I was like, oh, okay. I had never heard of this story previously. And so it was kind of a moment of serendipity where I was like, maybe this story is actually more important than Heart of Darkness for what I'm working on, because one of the things I want to discuss a bit in my work is this idea of the double. What's great about this story is there's this secret that they share between them, and it's not unlike the secret we have in ourselves, where we have kind of our light and our dark sides, and they both know us, and they know each other, but somehow they still work synergistically, even though they should be kind of enemies or opposites. I think this story is about how a stressful situation, a sort of moral stress, can provoke the shadow and like psychology more. And I think this other figure, this kind of lawless, sub-rational self that he finds, now whether that figure is real or not, I don't know. And that's part of the beauty of this, is you're not really sure. And I think that's kind of what makes it uncanny. There's not a lot of plot in this story. There is a minor amount of plot, but that's not the beauty of the story. I think the beauty of it is the duality and the idea of opposites, and how these things kind of inform us as people. So I think much of the story is showing you the differences between two things, and how one thing can seem negative, but then it's actually the opposite of what it might appear. In psychology, they often talk about how you need to harness your shadow to get kind of control over your emotions and things. And in this case, Conrad is using these kind of elemental opposites to kind of illustrate this more and more. Like, he talks a lot about land and sea. We often think of land as the protective, whereas we see the sea as very dangerous or like unwieldy or kind of chaotic. But in the story, he kind of flips that on its head, and where like land is kind of like the danger, like, oh, once we get to land, this is going to happen. Whereas sea is like the freedom, the element of possibility, let's say. He talks a lot about light and darkness in a similar manner, and how, darkness holds all the secrets. And through the story, I guess this is a very minor spoiler, through the story, he kind of hides this man in his cabin, and they have like these conversations. And in the kind of darkness is where the truth comes out, even though we often think of the light being, I saw the light or whatever being the truth. So there's all these weird kind of things where it's being flipped on its head. Sound and silence, same thing. But I guess the question here in the story is the double real? Is the doppelganger real? I don't know. I like not knowing, and I like the way the story ended. I like that the story could be read on a superficial level and just be a story. But I also like the fact that if you know things about psychology, and even if you know things about Hermeticism, that it can be read on a very different level. And I think that's quite fascinating. My thoughts about it, I don't know. I mean, if you like Heart of Darkness, I think you'll love it. One criticism I have, but I have this about a lot of books from this era, is it's quite wordy, maybe overly wordy. Sometimes the descriptions go on a little bit too long. But any kind of story where it's man's journey into the primal, I mean, I'm sold usually. I think it's, it's just an interesting idea. So like if you like Heart of Darkness, or if you like the book The Beach, where people are kind of going off the boat, let's say, I think you would really get something out of this. And it's not that long. I think it's around 50 pages. I'll put the exact page number on the screen here. But it wasn't very long. And I think it's a pretty cool read if you want to check it out. Anyway, if you have anything to say about it, if you've read it, or if you like Joseph Conrad in general, you can comment in the comments. But otherwise, that's about all I got for today. Have a good day. Take care.